So finally got the car put back together. It's running right now, and the coolant level seems to be holding. So just a brief overview for you guys who's trying to do this by yourself. One thing you do want to make sure that you have your valve cover gaskets. Even though the old ones are good, if the car has 170,000 miles, you might as well replace them. So I got silicone valve cover gaskets, silicone intake manifold gaskets. If you go to AutoZone or something, you'll get rubber ones, but if you pre-order it, you can get silicone ones, which in my opinion are way better, honestly. So we got new spark plugs. His old spark plugs were dead. The pins for the iridiums were down to like ceramics. Hold on, I'll show you. Here are the. So if you're trying to do this by yourself, you do need a few basic tools. You can rent them, or you can buy them. First, most important tool you would need is a cam shaft lock tool. It will lock both cam shafts in place once you have set up your timing correctly. Now, set up a timing also could give you a headache because there are no timing marks on the cylinder heads. They are all on the pulleys and on the chains, and that makes the job a bit harder. And easiest way to do this for any car is you bring your cylinder number 1 to the top dead center while you're turning them, and wherever the tops are, you will see. Don't worry about the chain link colors because you're going to reinstall them to the proper colors. So you want to make sure that you have the cylinder number 1 top dead center. The crankshaft dot that is on the gear is about 4 o'clock. You can mark it on the block if you have to, but that you don't have to move. Once these two line up with the top dead center, you slide the tool in, and you will notice the tool slides in perfectly on both sides without any gaps. After you've done that, you can start taking the timing chains, primary, secondaries, and the gears out. Take out your water pump. Now you cannot take out the water pump without removing the primary timing chain because that's in the way, and also 2 of the guides. While you're doing that, you might as well replace them because your water pump is out. And once you put your timing set back in, your water pump back in, your timing set back in, the only easiest way to seal the timing chain cover is you know how some people put the silicone on the cover and try to slide in and smear it all over the place? You don't need to do that. You actually always apply the silicone to the block. Alright, clean the cover up, lift the motor up just a bit so it's at an angle, and slide the cover in place and slam it on. That's the easiest way without smearing it. And once you've completed that, torque down all the bolts, put your valve covers on, put your spark plugs, ignition coils, connect your intake manifold, make sure you connect your cam sensors, and there's 2 plugs down there. There's one for cam sensor and one going underneath. I think those are knock sensors. You got to make sure those 2 plugs are connected. Before you install this guy, like I said before, you have to plug this in before you bolt this down. While it's out here, plug that hose, clamp it back up, and like I said before, this hose is a PVC that just connects onto the valve cover. It has no clamps on it. Okay, that helps you there. Well, the 2 things you do want to remember and be careful with, like if you're not a mechanic and not doing this for a daily basis, when you remove this, oil is going to drop onto your alternator. Do not start the car until you clean that oil off of the alternator, or you're going to have the alternator resistor back there burned, and then you have battery light on. So you clean that alternator up, put your belts back on, and install it. The only hardest part that you can prepare yourself for is removing the crankshaft pulley. You do need 2 tools. 1 tool to remove the pulley, 2nd tool to install the pulley, and both of them can be rented for free from AutoZone or any parts. Or if you can buy it because you own the car. Obviously you can rent it because you don't need to buy it. You only do this once. Anyway, and then the second part is installing the power steering pump belt. It's not a joke on these cars. It's terrible the way they designed it, because it does not have a tensioner and it does not have a tensioner bolt. You're stuck with bolting the power steering pump down for a tension, and that requires a lot of force. So let's say you're trying to do this the first time. My only advice to you is have a big heart and be ready to follow instructions. You'll get this done in no time. You will save yourself quite a bit money. For example, if you do timing chain, all the chains, primary, secondary chains, guides, tensioners, and then you also replace your gears and put new water pump back on there. You do your intake manifold gaskets and spark plugs. You could easily say this job would have cost you $3,500 to $4,000, and you could save all that money just by paying for parts and your labor. So the reason I'm explaining at the end as well is because I couldn't make the rest of the video. My phone ran out of battery, and that's the interesting part. Anyway, so everything I have mentioned is very easy on this car, just time consuming. And I would not, if the timing, the variable valve timing gears look a little worn out, please do not put them back together, because they will throw a code for a lack of pressure, and you're gonna regret not changing them. So all I can tell you is change those while you're there. They don't cost much, but they save you a lot of headache. You might not have any codes when you're before the work, but you definitely will have after the work, because remember, the timing chains do stretch, so alignment changes. And after you put a new chain back on, whatever causes it, it will throw a light for the low pressure. So change those and you'll be in good hands. On this side, you don't have a lot to remove. You only got a cam sensor to remove, and the throttle body plug, and a bunch of hoses. Everything over here. So on the back end, you got to disconnect the oxygen sensor here, this kind of plug. And then this whole wiring right here just lifts on this other side. And this wire here, you just loop it over and then hold it there. It's out of your way. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope this will help you do your job. And let's see if the car has any lights on. No, it's running normal. Temperature is normal. So we should be good to deliver this car to the customer. He was a bit in a rush, and I understand these cars, you need them to drive. So a diagnostic tip for you guys is, if you go to a mechanic and it tells you you're leaking the coolant from a timing cover, you tell him to show it to you, because this timing cover is sealed. If you lose coolant, you definitely are going to lose oil as well, because they're all together in the same pocket. Now, diagnostic tip for you, another one is, if you're losing coolant inside the timing cover, it's directly getting mixed into the oil. So if you have a 2011 or 2009 and above Ford with a 3.5 liter non-turbo engine, and you have a coolant leak, actually on this side of the car, you have a bad water pump. If it's not thermostat, if it's not radiator, or it's not coolant bottle leaking, then it's a bad water pump. Now, if you go to a mechanic and he tells you you're leaking a coolant from the timing cover, just ask him to show you, because you cannot leak coolant from timing cover in these engines. Number one reason is the covers are sealed, and there's a pump that's directly mounted onto the block, and then you got yourself a oil in the same valley. So if the water pump came to a point where it's leaking coolant on this end, it's going to start dropping that coolant directly and mixing it into the oil, because they're together, and you will see a foam build up on your cap. That's one way to know that you have a bad water pump. Another way to know if you have a bad water pump is if you're seeing puddle on the ground of the coolant. Now that doesn't mean it's leaking from the timing cover. Like I stated, it would never leak from the timing cover because it's sealed shut. However, where it does leak from is this is a channel. This is a channel, and it's built here for a purpose. So when you turn the water pump around, this is what happens. When the bushing inside gives up and breaks, the coolant leaks out, and then in this channel it starts to come out from this channel, and on the engine block side there's a channel, and in there is a tube guiding out. It will take that water coolant out right behind your alternator. So when you get the car up on a lift, you'll basically see a coolant leaking behind the alternator, going all the way down, touching the pan and splashing around, so it's hard to determine. But if you see it on this side, you definitely have a bad water pump. Water pump also has two seals. When you open the packet, don't throw away a second seal because you need both. First seal is basically to seal the water pump itself. Second seal is to seal this valley section. That is why they built this in. These do fail, and you can tell this guy's bushing went out, and we ended up replacing it. When you go to buy a water pump, it helps to know which water pump you have. You see the difference? The single chain guide and the dual chains. So some of the Fords, even though you tell them the right year, make, and model of your car, you might end up with the dual chain guide pulleys. So in that case, make sure to buy the parts after you take out your stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be making trips back and forth. And it did happen to me on this car, and that delayed my repairs a little bit. But anyway, well, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this has helped you with your repair, prepared you for what you need to do, and see you in the next video, which is that guy right there. And then I have a Toyota I'm going to be taking the engine out.